So Risa had asked me to share just a little bit, kind of before going into the presentation, a little bit about some of the barriers to access. And often when we talk about the barriers to access, we talk about kind of two primary things: physical barriers to access, and let me share both: physical barriers to access and functional barriers to access. When we talk about physical barriers to access, what we're talking about is, our participants, our individuals, our children, youth able to physically get to parks or green spaces or waterways. Is it within their community? Is it in their neighborhood? Do they have the transportation to get there? Do they have the equipment, the materials? Do they have the knowledge? And that begins to get into then some of the functional barriers to access, right? So knowledge of a particular outdoor activity or a particular sport, representation in that space. Do I feel like my community exists in those outdoor activities or outdoor spaces? And then a feeling of sense of a feeling of belonging and a feeling of safety. And I want to drill down a little bit on this concept of safety and what it means in the outdoors. And I'll dive into it particularly with an example. I'm an avid kayaker. I've been kayaking, paddling for the past 20 years, and have led and guided in kayaking as well. And there was a trip I was recently on here in Georgia about a year and a half ago on the Altamaha River. It was a group of us, a very diverse group that was out there, and we were paddling over several days down the Altamaha River, which is one of the largest rivers here in Georgia. And we stopped at a takeout at Altamaha Regional Park. And one of the first things that we encountered were a tremendous amount of flags everywhere. This was in a particularly rural community, and and regardless of politics, this was a location that was, it's a public, very much a public or regional park. You walk into the concessionaire stand and you see Confederate flags all over the walls. And I remember the first greeting that I received before receiving a proper greeting was, "Oh, what is this? What is this group doing here? Is this group here for a protest, or?" Because and to quote them, "This is Trump country." And so, if you guys are here for a protest, and we were like, "No, we're just here for a paddle trip." And we just took out here at this spot, and we're camping here, and we have permits here for the event, for the night. This was a particularly jarring experience for me as someone who has paddled in remote areas, as well as in urban areas all across the country, for nearly 20 years. And I imagine what that experience must have been like for some of the folks that were on that trip that were paddling the Altamaha River for the first time. They immediately felt othered, right, by some of the questions that were being asked of us. They immediately felt like maybe because of the color of our skin, we weren't welcome in that space, or we weren't a part of the normal crowd in that space. And there were all of these feelings of isolation that immediately came over, especially a small group of us throughout that evening that we spent there at Altamaha Regional Park. When we talk about safety in kayaking and in paddle sports in particular, I'd break down safety into kind of two main categories, right? Perceived safety and real safety issues. And both of those are, or perceived safety and physical safety issues. And both of those are real in the eyes of a participant in the outdoors. What I mean by when I say perceived safety issues, or let me start first with physical safety issues, right? There's all sorts of physical risk that we take on when we get out, when we paddle on the water, the risk of drowning, the risk of ending up in a strainer, the risk of encounters with animals, wildlife, insects, and so forth, right? There are those very real physical risks, but then there's also perceived risk as well, right? So when a participant feels unwelcomed in a particular area or setting, or when they have to drive by certain flags that are intentionally sometimes placed to other groups of people, that also becomes a safety issue. It increases anxiety, and we know that across paddle sports in general, anxiety is high, especially when you're whitewater kayaking. And so all of those become barriers to access. Perception also starts long before you arrive at the site that you're paddling or that you're recreating as well. Excuse me for a sec. I think about also here in Georgia, there's a lake here that some of you may be familiar with called Lake Lanier. And Lake Lanier is known as a site where an entire Black community was destroyed, was burned down, and then the area was flooded and dammed to create what is now known as Lake Lanier. And there are all sorts of myths and legends about Lake Lanier being haunted. But again, it reaches back into some of those deep cultural roots. And all across Georgia, and especially the US Southeast, there's unfortunately really tragic history that exists about people who have been killed in and whose bodies were dumped in rivers. And so when we talk about safety, we unpack some of those. And I often like to spend time when I'm talking about outdoor barriers or barriers to outdoor access, really unpacking that barrier of safety, of both perceived and physical safety. Wanted to pause there and just see if there's any questions, and I'll talk a little bit about the Outdoor Foundation, the Thrive Outside initiative, and how some of our Thrive Outside communities are working to address safety and other barriers to access. All right, I'll go
Les,
ahead.
I'll just
Huh?
mention that, others may be thinking the same thing. When I hear you talk about that, and some of what you've said I've heard before, or I've heard the same story multiple times in different contexts or slightly different versions of the same story. My mind always goes to, what can I do? What can I do? And whatever I can do will not fix nothing tomorrow, but what can we begin to initiate? So maybe that's sort of, um, if you're a problem solver, a leader, program manager, you want to go do something, right? So anyway, that's maybe what other people are thinking. So I encourage you to ask questions, you guys in the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just thinking about what we can do, and I'll highlight some examples from Thrive Outside communities, and I'm sure Zawari will dive in on this as well. I think the first thing is what you're doing right now, right? Just becoming aware of the experiences of diverse individuals in the outdoors, right? Whether it be um, individuals of different racial or ethnic backgrounds, individuals of different gender backgrounds, right? We know that in outdoor recreation, especially in paddle sports, um, things like violence and risk is very much a gendered issue as well. The experience of a woman or of a non-binary person in the outdoors is different than that of a cisgendered man. To understanding barriers that exist for someone that maybe speaks a different language, and that is navigating that landscape that in that way as well. One of the things that Risa and I had talked a little bit about in preparation for this call is, how do we effectively outreach to more diverse communities? So often we get the question from outfitters and from outdoor recreation, nonprofit organizations, how do we diversify, right? We provide this great program, but individuals from XYZ community aren't joining our program. And so to that, a few of the points that we talked about is one, it takes time, right? It's essential to really build authentic relationships with the communities that you're hoping to outreach with well before the transaction, right? The transaction is getting them out on the water. But if you think about an individual that may have never been on the water before, which in many of the outdoor programs that I've led, and I'm sure for Zabari as well, many of our participants have never even, been on the water, even swimming in some cases, and lack access to even swimming pools or safe and well-maintained swimming pools in their community. And so there's that inherent fear. So really taking the time to get to know and understand the community that you're looking to bring into the sport is really essential, and then meeting the individual where they're at in terms of comfort and safety. And so we often talk about trauma-informed programming, but I would also encourage folks to really just take an individual approach to getting to know and understand the comfort level, the safety level, the experience level of the participants that are joining your program, to ensure that they have, especially if it's their first experience, that they have a really strong first experience out there on the water, and that they see themselves as a part of a community ongoing as well, and that it's not just a transaction in order to increase diversity on a particular trip or on a particular program. All right, I'll briefly talk about the Thrive Outside initiative, and then I'll pass it to Zarbari to share a little bit more about what's happening specifically in Chicago there as well. So let me share screen. All right, can folks see my screen? All right, excellent. So the Outdoor Foundation, a little bit about us. The Outdoor Foundation, we're the philanthropic arm of the Outdoor Industry Association and the outdoor industry, really dedicated to getting people outside for their health, for the health of communities, and for the overall health of the outdoor industry. We do our work in increasing equitable access to outdoor recreation through both community investments, through grant making, particularly through our Thrive Outside initiative, as well as through groundbreaking research. And many of you may be familiar with our industry leading report that we publish each year, the Outdoor Participation Trends Report, which we publish in collaboration with the Outdoor Industry Association. To pull from that report, and we actually just recently published the 2025 Outdoor Participation Trends Report, so you'll see some updated data there. But in 2024, over 181 million participants recreated outdoors, just shy of 60% of all Americans in the outdoors, and or all Americans age 6 and older. And so we're really excited about this trend for a couple of reasons. Not only are more people getting outdoors, and we know that that makes us healthier, it increases and improves wellness. It also cultivates the next generation of more diverse and more engaged outdoor enthusiasts and environmental stewards. But what also inspires us about the numbers that we've been seeing through the Outdoor Participation Trends Report is we've seen an increase in diversity in people getting outdoors. Last year, for the first time in our 17 years of reporting, over 50% of women recreated in the outdoors, which is really exciting. And then we see growth in new outdoor enthusiasts, especially being driven by people of color, who historically and still to this day experience, as we talked about, experience barriers to access, and in many cases were historically excluded from some of the outdoor recreational activities that we track. That said, while we see an increase in outdoor recreation or the number of people recreating in the outdoors, one of the concerns that we have, especially at the Outdoor Foundation, is that kids are getting outdoors less frequently. So while there are more kids getting outside, ever since the advent of social media and smartphones and increases in screen time, we've seen a steady decline in frequency or how often kids are getting outdoors each year. And so you see that depicted from over the past 11 years. When we connect with nature, we know that people and planet thrive, and yet, 28 million youth lack accessibility to nature near to their home. Over 80% of children don't get outdoors even once per week. And when you average it, 7 minutes is the average amount of outdoor time that children get each day. For some of us, that might be startling. At least for me growing up, we stayed outside. Our parents had to drag us back in when the lights came on, versus, kids nowadays are much more connected to screen time. And some of the most recent statistics that I've seen is between 7 to 9 hours per day is how much time kids are spending connected to a screen versus being in the outdoors. So Thrive Outside as an initiative has been the outdoor industry's solution to increasing outdoor participation. And through the Thrive Outside initiative, we invest strategically in communities and community coalitions that are working to tackle some of the barriers to outdoor access, whether it be transportation or gear or culturally responsive programming. Our Thrive Outside communities are tackling the barriers to access and expanding innovative programming that is helping to connect youth in transformative ways to the outdoors. And over the past 5 years of the initiative, over the past 4 years of reporting, we've seen a steady increase in the number of youth served by the partners of the Thrive Outside initiative. And then we talk about equity, right? We talk about some of the barriers to access. One of the things that our Thrive Outside initiative really focuses closely on is the percent of youth from historically underrepresented communities that are represented in our programming. And this is just one statistic, but a really important one, that 79% of participants across all Thrive Outside communities last year are participants of color. And so breaking down some of the barriers of or some of the stereotypes of who belong in the outdoors, and who has access. So these are where our 13 Thrive Outside communities currently are. And this year we're launching two new Thrive Outside communities. Well, to be announced. I guess I can't say yet. And our Thrive communities look like this. So they typically have a backbone organization that is helping to coordinate the activities of the coalition. They have steering committee partners. They engage community-based organizations and nonprofits, local businesses, outdoor recreation programs, and outfitters, schools and school districts, local, state, and federal land management agencies, funders in the philanthropic community, healthcare centers, social service providers, and many others. One of our Thrive Outside communities engage sports leagues in their as part of their coalition as well. And then the Outdoor Foundation provides a number of different supports, from multi-year grants to each of the Thrive Outside communities to help support their coalition's efforts, trainings and technical assistance, fundraising support, connections to outdoor industry brands and retailers to provide gear and to break that down as a barrier to access, and then technical assistance. And each year, we also bring all of our Thrive Outside communities together, or the backbone organizations of all of our Thrive communities together through a convening where they then share best practices from their work, and build new and innovative models and approaches. So I'll wrap with this. This is a quote, and this is actually just a really powerful quote for me as well. The person in this picture, her name is Alexis. She was one of the program participants when I was at Outdoor Outreach, and she went from being a program participant to becoming a leadership program graduate, where we taught youth essential career skills, taught them how to become instructors and to also lead outdoor programs. And this was a picture that was taken of her earlier this year where she was teaching another student how to rock climb for the first time. And this picture is particularly special to me because I remember how shy Alexis was when she had joined the leadership program. She felt very intimidated by the expertise of those around her, but she was really smart and she caught on. She caught on really quickly. And so this was the quote that she offered. She said, "This program has instilled in me a confidence that I did not think I possess, a love for the outdoors that shaped my life, my view of the world, and the wonders it possesses." Alexis is a prime example of when you help a youth to feel a sense of community in the outdoors, they then want to build that community for others. And Alexis has since gone on to facilitate trips for hundreds of other youth in the outdoors. So I'll stop sharing screen, maybe hold space for one or two questions, and then pass it over to my colleague Zerbari, who will share a little bit more in depth about some of the incredible work that she's doing at Chicago Adventure Therapy and Thrive Outside Chicago. And if none, I can pass it on to Zerbari. All right, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Lesford. And hello, everyone. Again, my name is Sabari. I am the executive director of Chicago Adventure Therapy, which is a Thrive Outside partner in Chicago. And super excited to be a part of this roundtable and to share a little bit about what Chicago Adventure Therapy is doing in Chicago to activate space, to build leaders, to provide representative leadership, and to kind of close that equity and access gap in the city. And so just a little bit about me before I jump into the organization. I started off with the organization 16 years ago as a participant. A woman, the founder of the organization, brought a kayak and maps and charts into the gym and said, "Hey, this is a career," into a college career fair, and said, "This is an option for you." And I did not know that that was a thing. And the next year, I saw some of the girls for the organization that I was working with at the time, Girl Driven Research Kayaking, and I looked over and I said, "I want to do that." And I've been doing it ever since. And so this year, I took over as the executive director of this organization to continue the work that it's been doing over these past 16 years. Chicago Adventure Therapy started in 2007 as an organization to be able to blend outdoor adventure, like the healing powers of the outdoors, and being in the city of Chicago. And there wasn't anything like that being done in Chicago. And so the founder and former executive director, Andrea Nepper, created the organization to merge those two things together and started off partnering with organizations, youth servant organizations. That was the core programming. So even if they were providing services such as gun prevention and intervention, services for refugee young people who are on the spectrum, and other organizations and neighborhoods that are high impact for gun violence and whatnot, they were at whatever services they were providing, Chicago Venture Therapy, or fondly CAT, would provide structured 6 weeks, 1 day, 3 day, 3 week, however the organization's able to, programming for their young people and integrate that into what they were doing. So that was our beginnings and how we started as an organization. Over the years, we then grew from working with about max of 300 young people to over 1,300 in the past 4 years, because the capacity and the need for the work that we're doing has increased. And so we do kayaking, rock climbing, biking, hiking, camping trips, all the gamut of outdoor adventure sports for young people, to be able to not just introduce them, but to kind of facilitate that love for the outdoors. And as that love for the outdoors continues to be facilitated with different organizations, we keep that access open. And that's how the second branch of the organization kind of created itself, our adventure communities. And so our young people who fell in love with paddling year round, they have opportunities to be able to become paddle sport instructors, to lead in the outdoors, to teach even folks who have been paddling for 5, 6, 7 years, longer, 20, 30 years. Our youth are the ones who are teaching them skills and getting them out on the water at different symposiums as they gain their certifications and continue to learn and grow with a community of folks. And we also have that for our climbing community. So they go ice climbing, and then they bring the next generation and next group of young people to go ice climbing. And these are young people from all of our different partners. And so you may have an ice climbing trip, a refugee young person who is on parole from, a gun prevention intervention organization, and 3 young girls from an Inglewood organization that's providing services for them, all together ice climbing and being in community with each other. And that's what we were building, that these barriers and the outside that adults are not able to get past and be able to recreate and live and grow in, these young people are doing that. Doesn't matter what neighborhood or organization you're coming from, what we're here for is paddling. And this 7-day amazing trip at the Apostle Islands, or this 3-day rock ice climbing trip, is exactly what we're here for. And everything else just falls down to the wayside. And they build each other, they grow in community, they push each other, they're there for each other. And the hard times when you get the screaming willies, or when you're kayaking and there's a storm behind you and we just have to keep paddling, they're encouraging each other and building resilience with each other. And so that's our adventure communities that was kind of built from how do we keep that access available. And then over the years, we also realized that, hey, families also need to be able to be a part of this. And I specifically spoke on this and starting this branch of the organization because for 10 years, I did kayaking, paddling. I loved it. And my family is a refugee family and they did not understand it. And so there was no support for that. And so it wasn't necessarily a career path that I was going for, but to be able to bring my parents in and show them, hey, this is what I do. This is what I love. And for them to finally understand that, and that support to kind of swim in, is really important. So we do that for our young people too, not only for them to have healing experiences with their families, but for them to show, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I love. I'm really good at this. And this is something that I want. I want to be a steward of the outdoors in the future. And this is why it's important to me. And so that's how our family adventures were born. And so it's a 2-pronged plan there. And then we also realized that we need to be in schools because a lot of the work that we're doing, we're able to minimize it into smaller snippet workshops for Chicago Public Schools. And their risk assessment is very different from the rest of the outdoor world, especially in the city. And so like you can't go 6 feet, you can't be near water, all of that. And so we still bring the outdoors and that therapeutic and healing and positiveness to our young people from K through 8th grade. We also work with city colleges of Chicago providing wilderness first aid. And so young people are able to provide services for their people because at the end of the day, we live in a city where gun violence is prevalent and they are the true first responders. And so we do first aid for severe trauma as well as wilderness first aid for both our partners and young people across the city to build that cachet of information and skills for them. And then I promise I'm almost done. We have our community festivals, which is really what got me into the organization, but taking it to the next level, being at a block party, back to school bash and things like that. And bringing young people who have done the programs, not just like, oh, this is like the staff that don't look like you, but these are the people who look like you, who are leaders in this outdoors, to ask questions, answer questions, show them fun ways to get involved and sign up for a family adventure and so on and so forth. I've had young Black girls ask me, well, I'm not going to go paddling because of my hair. And I'm like, oh, listen, I've been doing this for years. I can tell you what to do with your hair. Let's go give this a try. And that could be a barrier for a young person. Their entire life have not tried this. And they can't say that to people who don't look like them or ask that question. So really being in that community and answering those questions for our young people. And a big thing about the organization is that we want to make sure that we're activating spaces right here in Chicago. They don't have to pay thousands thousands of dollars to go to Colorado, have this amazing experience that they'll never have again. They get to activate the Calumet River and the African American Heritage Water Trail and learn about the history behind it and paddle those waters themselves right in their backyards. Jackson Park Inner Harbor, and that neighborhood, and all of the different things that Lake Michigan has to give, the Chicago River, Skokie Lagoons, all these beautiful green spaces that Chicago has worked hard to build and to grow and cultivate. Our young people are putting their feet in those spaces right here in their hometown. And yes, we do symposiums in, California and New York. We take folks to Florida. We take people all sorts of different areas. We were just at the Apostle Islands in Wisconsin with a group of 40 young people from Inglewood, from Outdoor Afro, from young gun prevention intervention organization. Up to 40 of us were out there on islands, all those different things. But they can also do that right here in the city of Chicago in their own backyard. And so that's really important to us. And that's that community festival and community and land activation of those spaces. And so that, I feel like I've shared a lot about the organization and what we do. But I do want to add that we build leaders in what we do. It's not just try this and, that was fun and what's next. No, we talk about it. We reflect on it. We ask young people, what are your goals moving forward? And some of them like, I just want to kayak again. Cool. We're going to get you on another kayaking trip. Oh, I want to do what you're doing, Zabari, and lead people. All right, let's get you on the coaching track, or let's get you on the leadership track. We're going to bring in a coach from outside, and they're going to certify folks in 3 months, and we're going to get you ready for that certification. And so building leaders in the outdoors so then they can continue to bring their siblings, their friends, their neighborhoods into it is really important. And they see themselves in the outdoors as outdoor leaders. And I like to wrap it up by saying that I myself did not see myself an outdoor leader. And now every day I wake up and I'm in these programs with these young people, and they do say, hey, I want to be like that. I want to do this. And I'm like, yes, you can. And there's a lot of us out here, and I expose them to all of my outdoor leaders and executive directors that are taking over this country in the outdoors. And it's so amazing to be a part of this giant movement where we thought we were all unicorns in all of it, but truly we're stallions, and we're paving the way and marching and clearing the ground for a better and new outdoors that's inclusive of everybody, that doesn't have any of the seclusions and denial of access and all of those different pieces. And so that is Chicago Adventure Therapy and what we're doing in Chicago. I would like to share a small film with you all, if Risa would be willing to share that real quickly, just to kind of sum up one of our big adventures that we do as an organization, kind of show you like who we are and what we do.
Zabari, I don't know if you saw, but I lost my power. I've come
Oh,
back. I think we continued to record, but if you could click on that, so I don't have the link. If you could click on
okay.
that and
I'm
share.
going to share my screen in just a second. You all should see the video right now.
Thank you.
It's an amazing mission to be able to bring the healing powers of the outdoors to young people in the inner.
All right. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can now.
Awesome. Perfect. I don't know if the audio is going to work. I'm going to do one more thing to make sure. Share sound, share. All right, you should be able to hear the sound.
It's an amazing mission to be able to bring the healing powers of the outdoors to young people in the inner city, specifically Chicago.
Zabari, I don't think the video is playing.
Sorry, Dora,
I can
I
hear the
am
sound
the
though.
Are you not seeing the video playing? Give me 1 second. Share. All right. Is it
incoming
playing
executive
now?
director.
Yeah, a little bit. There's a little bit of a
It's an
lag.
amazing mission to be able to bring
Sorry.
the healing powers of the outdoors to young people in the inner city, specifically Chicago. My name is Zabari Widor. I am the incoming executive director of Chicago Adventure Therapy.
What is adventure therapy? Essentially, what it is using outdoor sports, using nature for healing and positive mental health. And it really is about pulling out the strengths that people have, as opposed to being about a medical model, which is that something's wrong with people. And in being strengths-based, we really found then that we needed to be youth-centered.
I first got involved with CAT when I was an 8th grader going into high school, and there was a college and career fair being held in the gym of the school that I was going to attend. So I walk into the gym, and one of the first things I see is a red kayak, and Andrea's there. She has maps and charts and radios, and I'm just like, what is this? I thought this was a college and career fair. And I looked over and I said, I'm going to be a part of that. Like, that's what I want to do.
When I first met Kat, I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the gangs. I could say what really helped me, it was the sports, the outdoor adventure. I went camping with them at Devil's Lake for the first time camping, first time climbing outside, and coming back to Chicago made me feel a little sad. You know, I was like, maybe this is what I need. You know, a lot of these kids don't know outside of Chicago. They're only engaged in negative activities, so that's all they know. CAT focuses on creating these safe spaces and welcoming people. The therapeutic piece about Chicago Adventure Therapy is we have the staff that make it comfortable, you coming in and make you like feel like your family, you know? And then comes the activity, the kayaking, the rock climbing. It like builds character. It helps you like overcome fear. It helps you like become social. It's a lot.
Apostle Island. This year's trip, 2024, Apostle Island, it is bigger waters. It is more challenging conditions and environment.
There are people who say you can't take beginner paddlers on Lake Superior and that you can't take them to the Apostle Islands. But a risk assessment is dynamic. You have to know what the forecast is. You have to have solid ratios. You have to have good leaders.
The first day, it was just all about logistics, getting people tents and sleeping bags and boats. And that was pure chaos.
I have that list right there, and then here's the list that we're gonna need to pack boats. You don't want room left in these boats.
The idea is to be able to introduce them to Lake Superior, to be able to take them to the mainland sea caves, to be able to make a crossing, to be able to camp on an island, like to take people to that next level of paddling.
It's beautiful out here, and you don't really get to see much of that back where I'm from at home, you know? The rocks, the caves, everything, the people, the vibes are amazing. The conversations, it's life-changing, honestly.
Awesome, I ain't gonna lie. I didn't know I was gonna like it so much until I got to like the third time of falling in. Like, I'm like, man, I can keep doing this.
Healing can be done in multiple ways. You can heal someone physically as a doctor, but you can also heal them emotionally and holistically heal them.
Adventure therapy actually is really effective. Speaking as a former participant, I have overcome obstacles in my life where I'm engaged in negative activity, switching off to becoming a full leader.
Even if it's just one young person who walks away and says that this changed my life, that this opened my eyes to something more, to something different, to something else, it makes it worth it.
I hope the lag was
Tesla
not.
stock is crashing. The headlines say Elon's empire is collapsing. What if they're all dead wrong? Tech insider Jeff Brown, the man who told everyone.
Okay. I hope the lag was not too much, but just a taste of just what CAT is doing, Chicago Venture Therapy is doing in Chicago, to kind of wrap it up. And if there's any questions about the organization, what we're doing with the help of Thrive Outside and other organizations in the network, please let me know. I'll open it up for some questions.
Well, thanks, Sabar. You packed in years of experiences into like 10 minutes, or clear that you're doing so much and that you care so much about what you're doing.
Yes.
So thanks. I think, let's see, that's pretty much what we wanted to have you guys talk about. Are there questions for either Les in the big picture, or any specific things about the Chicago program? Love to have you just chime in, and you can just unmute yourself and chime in if you'd like. We might have questions on how to start it. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to. I'm glad that we've done this, and that RMS and Outdoor Foundation is having these conversations, as it will serve to enlighten both groups. Zabari, I told you the first time I heard your story, it was amazing, and it was none greater than today. So thank you so much. Les already knows how I feel. But I just think it's important that we're, at the intersection of river management and recreation, especially as it applies to diversity and equity and inclusion.
Chris, why don't you just mention for folks who have not met you what your program is? Because you're.
I work at McDonald's. No, we are also a proud Thrive Outside community, River City Outdoors. We actually have access to two of the largest rivers in North America, the Mississippi and the Missouri. So we're able to get youth and adults out on the Missouri and the Mississippi. And then we work with the Boys and Girls Clubs, the YMCA, different youth serving organizations to get them outside on a regular basis. And our whole goal is to make these organizations self-sustainable. We can always prop up and we can always support people, but we really want people to be getting and going outside on their own. And we just want to be able to encourage. We also have a gear lending library, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to think if there's anything. And then we do some mini grants. So just today we were at it is a mountain bike course, the only one in the city of St. Louis. And we were, we had made a gift to them, and it opened today. And the really cool thing is that the club, I guess that's what they call it, a bike club, totally diverse. I mean, that's not what I was expecting when I came to the park. Also, I cannot mountain bike. We discovered that today as well. I'm going to stick to paddling.
Chris, was that one of the grantees from the Gateway Outdoor Expo last year?
Yeah.
That's amazing to hear.
Yeah. You'll see some pictures online at some point.
Yeah, I need to share pictures. Well, think about we have a few minutes left. If you do have more questions, I'll just do a couple of plugs for RMS. We have a YouTube channel. We have over 250 videos that are either meetups like this, rivers of my office, selfies of people who do river work, webinars, workshops, wild scenic rivers, hydropower relicensing practitioners, and for those who are interested in all manners of access. We have a couple of events coming up next week. We've got 25 or 30 people going to the Snake River to learn from each other. This fall, we'll have a career series for people who do GIS work, river GIS safety, river science, and river policy. We'll have a trip on the James River that will be in the same weekend as our annual board meeting. And we have a couple other rivers, like on the Cahaba River in Alabama, and there's one or two more, and we're working on next year. We'd love to have you. I'm going to put this in the chat.
And Rissa, I saw Rachel raise her hand as well.
Oh yeah, Rachel, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for those really great talks. I have two questions that are kind of related, and I think any of you could field these. One is, in your experiences leading these awesome programs, what sorts of things do you think are most impactful for people who then come back to rivers? Is it the community building that you mentioned, or one of the participants in the video that Zarbari shared mentioned that initially he seemed hesitant, but then really wanted to continue doing this? Is it overcoming some personal adversity? What are those things that really stick with people that you're finding? And then the other question is, what is different about river systems or paddling compared to other activities that you do? Are there particular things or considerations that you have when you're taking people on a river or Lake Superior versus taking them rock climbing?
I think it's easy for us because we have an outfitter built into what we're doing. And I just think that it's something that a lot of our youth, a lot of people don't get the opportunity to a lot of people don't even think about getting on the Mississippi or the Missouri. It's not even they just don't think about it. And so it's inconceivable to them. Why would I want to go on the river, on the Mississippi River? So that's more of a kind of a shock factor. And hey, look, this is safe and you can do this.
I would like to say that I think what sticks with people is going through an adversity with a community of supporters. And having it be a choice, challenge by choice, has been really impactful. And just having people there to cheer you on when you've done something in this space. For our young people, it has made them come back to this spaces that we've activated over and over and over again. And that can be something, it doesn't have to be a giant, like, oh, I crossed this huge thing. Like, we've had people just like put their feet in at the Chicago River and just like be in water. And that's what's important to them. Or at the Calumet, and just knowing the history behind it and touching and doing bird watching there. And that, something that they could not do before, we're able to do. And then paddling versus climbing. I think a lot of the policies and procedures that my organization thinks about risk for climbing versus paddling is like there's small details, but in like all together, it's the community around it. If a young person comes by themselves or an adult comes by themselves, it's not as impactful, or they may not feel like they want to come back to it. It's about bringing a community of people, a support system, friends, groups, families together into these spaces. And so they build that relationship together.
Yeah, and I'll just add to what Kristen Zorbari shared. Ditto on community, 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 community. I try to emphasize that more than anything else. When, it's one thing to love an activity, it's another thing to find a group of people that love it with you and that you feel safe to go back out there with, especially in paddle sports, it's not an easily accessible activity if you're looking to do something solo. And so, finding other people with the knowledge, with the skill set, with the gear, with the equipment, with the boats that they could loan and whatnot is really, really essential. And so for folks that are running programs, I often encourage them to think about the user experience, right? Like from start to finish, how much information are you providing on the front end? Are you providing meals and like, taking that away as a barrier or something that they have to think about? Um, are you building in intentional time for folks to slow down and pot up and just enjoy rather than, chasing a destination or a distance? So really, really focusing on community. I also talk about competency. So, and competency doesn't have to be like, you leave today as an ACA level 2 instructor and you know how to roll and, do all of that. Competency could be I learned how to do an effective forward stroke and backward stroke, and I feel good at that. And someone affirmed me in my ability to do that. Affirmation and competency and skill set is so essential, especially for kids, right? Like if you walk away from something, like, it's like art class. If you walk away from art class and your teacher said, you have such an amazing painting, you're now that much more likely to explore that. And then the last thing I'd add, and I don't get to do programs as often these days now, working with the Outdoor Foundation, but I do volunteer very closely with my local paddle group through Georgia River Network. And one of the things that I found really draws not only a large crowd, but a very diverse crowd are the trips that are tied to culture and history. And so, I talked about the Altamaha. Ebenezer Creek is another great example of, there's deep history there. I'm not going to try to go into all of it right now. That's a creek, a tributary to the Savannah River. But when you weave in, like, this is how this space is culturally significant to your community or to a community. There are a lot of people that are drawn to the outdoors for that as well. And then the last thing I'll say is, allowing, and I've kind of mentioned it before, but allowing just moments of awe and reflection. Different people come to the rivers for different reasons. All beginners should probably ideally start out in flat water where they can do bird watching and they can just enjoy and take it in. Some people come out for the rush of whitewater rafting, but in either instance, allowing moments of awe and just reflection. on where they are, allowing them to take that in. We run such busy lives nowadays that we have so few opportunities to just have that peace. And that contributes to healing and the well-being and all of the other things that we take back with us, and make us love those areas.
Thanks, Les. But we're almost at it. We're kind of at time, but I wanted to get to Jenny McGarvey, if you're still here. And if you are, please chime in. You had your hand raised a little bit. And
I
then,
am still
yeah,
here, but I'm always happy to follow up by email afterwards, so everyone can hop off on time.
okay, well, thank you. We can definitely share your question. Will, why don't you go before we have to take off?
So same here. I'll follow up offline.
It's okay. How about you, Will?
Cool. I will happily go while I got you guys all here. Sorry, anybody can leave at any point. I love sitting in these conversations. They're super inspiring. And today felt a little different in that I felt like I had a path to actually follow up and with some action steps, looking through y'all's websites and things like that. Really excited about that. For Les, I had a question on one in building the communities and building the relationships. I guess I struggle with, there's such a big watershed that I work. How do I prioritize my time with each individual community? Because I can't be everywhere at once. So any insight that anybody has on that one, would love to hear that. How do I, pick one community and then sacrifice my relationship with the others? That's always something that I struggle with so hard.
Yeah. It's a good question. Just kind of giving that some pause. So, and I'm assuming you're talking about more so geographic communities or racial communities, or how are you thinking about community? Geographic communities. I would start first by assessing like who are the folks that you're engaging already currently on the trips that you're currently doing, and then looking at like who's missing from the table. So Georgia River Network, for example, they recently did that assessment and saw like, hey, most of the people that we're engaging are not only predominantly white, but also predominantly older. Like we're missing a whole age demographic, and based on that, really targeted and focused their outreach based on that. So I mean, that's one way to think about it. I wouldn't necessarily see it as like sacrificing a relationship over here in order to get this relationship over here, right? Like we don't think about our friends in that way. So it's like, how do I start conversations over here that then materialize into like, this person now trusts me to take them out on the water, maybe into an environment that they never would have been on before, and just thinking about the elements that it takes to engage that community. But building trust, really coming to the table without an agenda, or coming to the table like, my goal is to get you on this river next weekend. That might not be in the cards for the person that you're talking to or the group that you're talking to. I'd also engage, trusted community-based organizations that may be interested in alignment, understand what their priorities are, right? Like if they're a school, for example, Zawari was mentioning engaging schools, they might be thinking about it from an academic standpoint, right? Like how are we achieving Common Core standards or educational standards for the state through this program? And so meeting them where they are would be really essential there.
Cool. My second thing for you is I definitely want to talk about how to make Birmingham a Thrive community. I think that would be awesome. Yeah. And
shout about.
Okay, well,
and then for Zabari, I was really interested in the leadership track that you guys talked about, and would love to hear more about how y'all kind of set that up and got that running. I've been trying to figure that out with volunteers that we have here, and how do we take a one-time, member of our cleanup trip and turn them into a long-standing, higher level kind of volunteer that's helping to lead other groups. So love to hear any insight. And again, could follow up on email on that one too.
I think Zabari may have needed to hop off for another, but she dropped her email in the chat.
Cool. Thank y'all very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I can, if anyone's interested in following up, I can make sure we provide email addresses so that you can, ask questions of me. We can send it out to Lesford or Zabari. And thank you for attending. Apologies if there was any disconnection because of power things, but also one thing I'll do is a year and a half, or it's almost 2 years ago, we did a river management roundtable on the African American Water Trail. I'll send a link to that information also, because that's what Zabari mentioned. It's on the Little Calumet River in Chicago, that they have their own whole story. But thank you for attending today, and we'll see you on the river. Thank you, Les, so much. And Chris. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everybody, for being here.